welcome back to Inside the Musical Mind. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming the one and only Andrew Hagar. How are you, Mr. Hagar?
Doing great. How are you doing, Peter?
I'm doing good, doing good.
Good.
So you've got a lot of things on the horizon and recently on your plate. I just watched the Family Legacy, your segment with
Awesome.
your dad. How was that to
Yeah,
film?
it was great. We did, I think, total about 7 hours of interview. We did one with me and my dad, and then the rest of them just me solo. So I had no idea what they were going to use on the show. I didn't see the final package until the show had come out. So I thought they did a really good job. It was really funny. The interplay was great. I thought it was a nice moment of levity after Draven's story, which was, great and touching and heart wrenching at the same time. He's just
Sure.
such a sweet. So yeah, it felt really good to be on there, sharing an episode with him.
Yeah, and it was you had some good you know ragging on your dad's outfits and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's distressing to know that the bit didn't get you out of a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
Where's the
That
justice
was
in the
crazy.
universe?
Yeah, I mean, hey, I never ever name drop like that. And I mean, obviously now with social media, it's like anybody that wants to know can come on my page and probably find out pretty quick who my father is.
Sure.
But prior to that, I never told anybody. Like a lot of my best friends growing up, and in college and high school and stuff, they didn't even really know for
Hmm.
years until it came up. So yeah, it was pretty funny. The bit, like, they didn't really talk about it in the show too much, but like I ended up getting my license suspended because the cop lied about how fast I was going and wrote me up for higher than what I was actually going. I was
Oof.
I was driving with my cruise control and it limits it to a certain speed, and he wrote me up for 102, which is almost 20 miles faster than what I was actually doing. So
Ah,
yeah, guy had a bone to pick. I mean, hey, whatever gets the justice served. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, let's go. So, limited edition Psycho
Yeah.
is the name of the
Yes, sir.
EP. And your next single, Systematic Mind, should be out soon, right?
Yes, sir. It's coming out next Friday, May 5th. Really excited about that one. That's my favorite song off the record. And it's the very first song that Trev and I wrote together back in December of 2020. So I'm excited to finally have it, out in the wild, and hopefully people enjoy it as much as I do.
Yeah. Speaking of that, how did you end up working with Trev? I've interviewed him before, several years ago when he was doing his ZFG project,
Yep.
and I've he really brings a nice polished sound to everything he helps produce, and I mean that in a
Yeah,
positive way. Um,
absolutely.
so how did that get started?
Trev and I are old friends. I've known Trev for a long time. We met at the very first Chicken Foot show ever at the Roxy, back in late 2000s, I think. But yeah, he's one of my nearest and dearest friends. Obviously, we have a lot in common. And he's just such a like exuberant guy. And I never thought we were going to work together professionally, but just randomly during the pandemic, he hit me up. He'd been doing a lot of production gigs, and was kind of transitioning into more of a full time producer. And he had a really cool idea based on some of the stuff that I was doing. I was more of like, an acoustic artist. I had like an indie rock album that I had made in the pipe, but that had never, I didn't end up releasing that. And I don't know if I ever will, but based on some of the stuff I was doing at the time, he had an idea, and that ended up being Systematic Minds. So he called me up and, played a little bit over the phone. And I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. And he's like, do you want to, come down and record with me? So I like left that night and I drove down from Northern California down to his place outside of LA. And along the way, I just listened to the audio clip he sent me over and over, and just like, recorded some voice memos and some lyrical ideas. And we stayed up like all that night, like getting a rough draft of the song done. And then we spent the next couple of days like polishing it up. And yeah. And like I said, this song is my favorite song of anything that we did on the record. So I'm really excited to release it finally.
Cool. I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah.
The past stuff I've heard, the Red Light Appetite and all that stuff
Mhm.
is solid stuff. So I'm definitely looking
Thank
forward
you.
to hearing more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it is there a little bit to the camaraderie between you and Trev, just the fact that you're in similar situations as far as having dads who are legends in the business? I'm sure that could be a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely. And for someone like myself, it's like I spent so much of my life before, delving into the music industry, like developing myself, my own identity. And I never really had to overcome the idea of like living in the shadow. And it's been interesting these last whatever 7 or so years doing this stuff because a lot of the people that I've met through Trev knows a lot of other second gens, and most people I meet that come from that background have a really difficult time like self actualizing,
Mm,
and that's something that Trev and I bonded over because he like when we first met, we were both much younger, and he's a little bit younger than me, and we talked a lot about that kind of stuff, and we shared a lot of the same sentiments, and that brought us really close. And now Trev is like obviously this massive personality. Like he's done a lot of work to self actualize, and his spirituality and philosophy. And so yeah, that's something that bonds us together a lot. And we've been able to like talk pretty candidly about things that I probably couldn't talk to other people about because he gets it, and likewise for him to me. So
yeah,
yeah,
it
I
makes
really I
sense.
really appreciate our friendship. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I know you said in other interviews that obviously you got into music later in life, and
Mhm.
I wonder, do you think that's helped, like as far as like lyric writing or even songwriting?
Yeah,
Um, just because if somebody gets started in their teens and 20s, to be honest, like no matter how talented they are, when they're writing songs, they really only have so much life experience to draw from. Do you think it's helped you a little bit,
exactly.
like that you had a life before and then you had more of a wealth of experience to draw from to inspire you? Do you think that was a benefit?
I absolutely think that was a benefit. And, obviously, like I said, I did more of like a folk Americana thing for the first few years that I was doing this. And if you look at a lot of songwriters that come from that kind of genre, a lot of them are older people that are, that have like broken through in folk and Americana and even like, outlaw country. They're people in their like 30s generally or 40s that have lived really full lives and have a lot of inspiration, a lot of struggle to draw upon. Like I'm a firm believer that, the best art always comes from the worst circumstances. Suffering creates good
Hmm.
art. And I think, obviously people suffer at all ages, but to have a really educated perspective and a nuanced approach to how you express it, I think it definitely helps to have a little bit more life under your belt than
Sure.
the traditional, teen or 20 something pop singer.
Sure. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Now when you write material, what's usually the genesis for you? Is it usually a melody in your head, or is it a set of lyrics that you come up with, or a riff? I mean, what's usually the seed for you?
I mean, it depends, but I randomly get little lyrical ideas. I grew up doing a lot of creative writing, doing a lot of poetry. I've journaled for a long time now as part of like my like mental health practice or whatever. But all of those things really that's where the genesis of the idea usually comes from, is like a lyrical idea or like a title.
Mhm.
Then I mean, it's difficult to write lyrics first. If I ever write like a poem and I want to make it into a song, I always end up having to really massage things to get it once we get the
Yeah.
music. And prior to working with Trev, I mostly just wrote things completely on my own, like with an acoustic guitar on my couch or in my bedroom. And it's been really nice to work with somebody who's like musically much more adept than I am. I would never even, I mean, obviously I'm a musician, but I would never call myself like a musician. Like Trev's a guitar player and a producer, and he's fantastic. I'm more of a songwriter. I can play guitar, but I'm not like a shredder or something. So when I'm writing stuff at home, it's just a different kind of quality. So it's been really cool to write with Trev, and our process. He usually would come up with like a demo, like a short, melodic idea with his like with a guitar and maybe some backing tracks he would work up, and then I would come in and write the melody and the lyrics, and then we would kind of work together to gel it all together. And I do like that process because I'm much more of like a lyrical guy than anything else and a melody guy, so it works for me.
Yeah.
And and the stuff that I was doing immediately before the pandemic, I had started working with a couple different production teams in LA as kind of like their lyric guy. So there'd be like a track guy and the idea guy, the producer, kind of putting it all together, and me and a couple other people will come in and talk to the artist we were writing for, and like almost like a therapy session, and they'd be like, all right, cool, let's write about this, and then I'd come up with like some kind of lyrics, and that was really fun, and it was a good creative exercise that really
I
helped me
bet.
with my own songwriting. Yeah,
Yeah, I can see that'd be real beneficial.
definitely.
I'd be at a loss trying to write lyrics myself.
Yeah. That's the hardest part for most people, you know? It's like, how do you succinctly express the emotional idea, the emotional content and context? It's really difficult to get a big idea and kind of like funnel it down into just a few words that mean enough to people when they hear it to where they can latch onto it. That's a whole other kind of art form. So
Sure, and doing it, like you said, succinctly and not having it come across as bad high school poetry.
totally, that's the really difficult part.
Yeah.
you know I mean,
Now
everything's already been done, everything under the sun, right? So finding a new way, an interesting way to say the same thing, that's a really big challenge.
I bet. Now, the people you recorded this EP with, if you're doing shows, will that be the people you tour with? Or, like, do you have a group of people that you play with? Or will you be hiring a band, or are you planning on touring? What's the
I mean, I have a band. We've played a bunch of shows already, and we're going to be playing a smattering of shows through the summer. Looking to do something a bit more substantial by the fall. And yeah, they're people that I've worked with for a long time in other aspects. Like my guitar player Joey Ariema, fantastic songwriter, producer in his own right. We co-wrote and he produced Judgment Day and Cold Knife Karma, two of my earlier singles, before I started working with Trev. And we had done a bunch of stuff together when we were doing the production gig. So he's now like my, full-time guitar player when I play shows and I'm touring. And then his mutual friend and Trev's mutual friend, Greg Cash, who's another just longtime amazing studio musician and hired gun. He's playing bass for us and he's just an absolute ripper. And then he brought in his friend Dev Lebsack, who's like another long time studio hired gun guy. Is just an incredible killer drummer. He plays with a lot of really sick metal bands. So together, the four of us, like, we're friends first, and so it's really fun to go out there and play shows because the vibe is great. I mean, there's so many great musicians out there, but not a lot of them are great hangs. And that's like the most important thing when you're out there on the road, because no matter how cool you are and how secure you are and how ready you are for it, it gets really tough out there and personalities tend to clash. So
yeah.
the closer you are together already before you do it, the better it's going to be. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there and touring with these guys because, like I said, we played one-off shows, little small runs, 2 or 3 shows together, but we've never done a proper tour. I've only done that on my own or with my former guitar player and really good friend, Scott, Shredmaster Scott. I'm sure people remember that if they've been following me for a little
Mhm.
while. And Scott's
Yeah.
awesome, but he's really been successful with YouTube and that whole model of essentially just staying put and producing content. So that's kind of what he's doing now, and he's carved out a really really great niche for himself. So but I'm stoked to get out there with a band, man. It's really fun to get up there with a band. I spent, the entirety of my music career essentially playing solo up there. And that's a great thing. And it's great to develop the craft and the confidence to go out there and put on a show. Um, but I much prefer playing with a band. It's just so much more fun.
Yeah, especially if they're friends of yours. It's amazing how many
Yeah,
big bands where they're not great friends, and it's a contractual thing.
absolutely. And that blows me away because, like, I mean, you look at a lot of label experiences and label put together bands, and it's like, you have one artist that's not even really writing their own music a lot of times. Like, they'll have a very limited amount of input. The label's got their own songwriters, that have publishing deals and all this stuff, and everything is very contrived. And you see that a lot these days. And I'm just like, I have close friends who are big time studio and session musicians that are out there with like massive pop acts. And it's the same thing. It's like, it looks cool. You see it on social media and you're like, oh man, this guy's out there playing, Primavera Sound, or like out there in Europe playing these rad festivals. And it's like, you talk to them about it and they're like, oh man, like, I'm waiting 2 months to get paid for these last few gigs we did. And, it's like the money's not great and all this stuff. So I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna, I mean, pardon my language, but if you're gonna eat shit, it's better to do it with your friends. you know?
Yeah, exactly. At least do it with your own
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah. And
yeah, exactly.
you see like the things where you get these huge pop acts hiring these like virtuoso players, like the Super Bowl, and uh what's her name has Nuno Betancourt.
Oh yeah.
playing, and he
Yeah.
basically
Nuno's the
hits like
hoss.
one A chord, and like,
Yeah.
you needed Nuno Betancourt for that? Like,
Totally, yeah. But I mean, Nuno's also got like the look. I mean, that guy looks fantastic, not just for his age, but just in general, you know?
yeah,
So you get a, bunch of people like that up there. It's like the photos and the little 15, 20-second clips you're going to post, you're going to look fantastic, you know?
sure. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. That is a good
Yeah.
point. Um, now, May 5th for the next single, Systematic Minds. When do
Mhm.
you foresee the EP being released in full?
In June. Yeah,
In
that's
June. Okay.
yeah, my birthday will be on June 4th. So the plan is essentially to release Systematic Minds next week. And that's more of like a it's not like a ballad by any means, but compared to some of the other stuff I've released, it's definitely a little bit slower tempo
Okay.
and more ballady. So, but after that, we're gonna plan to release another big, fun, audacious banger that's kind of like Red Light Appetite 2.0,
Right.
and I'm gonna release that single as kind of the anchor to the EP, and I'm looking to do that on or around my birthday on June 4th. So.
Gotcha. Now, a video coming out for the next single?
Not for Systematic Minds. We'll have most likely like a lyric video with that,
Yeah.
and then yeah, I do want to do like a proper music video for the next one. But these days it's like unless you have a label or somebody backing you, it's really expensive to produce a decent quality music video that most people just aren't going to watch. And even most music publications, they don't want to do premiere stuff like they used to. A lot of it's like
Yeah.
pay to play kind of situations. And doing this all independent myself and financing this myself, I just don't have the capital that I would need to do that, and there's no return. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say, because you had the full thematic approach for the vampire theme for
Yeah,
Red
yeah,
Appetite,
right.
and it's great. But being that its only real market is basically YouTube,
Yeah,
I don't know if well, you could tell me, yeah, is the revenue
yeah,
not worth it versus just putting up a lyric video?
yeah. I mean, it seems these days a lot of people that do have much more financial security or financial backing, they do it just because it looks good and it's cool. But like, I don't know anybody that's making money on music videos. There's no return.
No, that makes perfect sense. Like, it's a great avenue, but yeah, and then of course the same thing with Spotify, get you out there, but the
Oh yeah.
0.03 of a cent per stream is just not going to add up to
Mm-mm.
anything.
No, it's really difficult to make money as a musician these days. I mean, you see most people are like content creators first and musicians second. Even people who are, really great quality musicians these days, in order to get any kind of, real push in the market, you kind of have to just be a content creator. And that's something that I've been at odds with for a long time because I'm not really a huge fan of social media. I mean, I post a lot of stupid stuff on there just for shits, but like I'm a very private person and an artist first. And like, I don't know, it's difficult to navigate this new music industry sometimes
Yeah.
because there's no real like value to a lot of the stuff you're doing. And especially the traditional stuff. Like everybody wants to have a cool music video. If I could make like a really, really awesome music video, like something like Red Light Appetite, I had a vision for that, making this kind of like B movie ish, kind of From Dusk Till Dawn inspired little
Hmm.
thing for the song. And like you said, tie it in thematically, the title and all this stuff. And we came up with some cool art and all these sigils and stuff and kind of made it, this like, I don't know, kind of like witchy, like B horror
Yeah.
movie thing. Cool. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And that was the whole point, but I mean, I didn't have to pay probably what people would think by the quality of that because I definitely called in some favors with friends and stuff. But I did spend way more money than I should have on that, and I thought the reception was going to be different at the time. We were still going through like a bit of a transition with how like music outlets were covering things, and I was able to get some decently big premieres out of it, but like that stuff doesn't do anything. It doesn't like move the needle in any
Hmm.
meaningful way in terms of pushing the marketing. I wasn't able to get like any kind of real editorial playlisting. I thought that the video would help with all that stuff, and it didn't. I mean, and now we're in a different era completely where a lot of famous music outlets aren't even covering stuff when it comes out. Like if there's a cool video, I mean, it's really pay to play. If you want an article on something like a traditional media outlet like Rolling Stone or something, it's like they're covering like clickbait stuff. They don't really care about doing music video premieres unless you're
Right.
paying them to do it. So yeah, it's just a different story entirely now, especially
Yeah.
compared to like when my pops was coming up. He tries to give me really good advice, but a lot of the stuff he's talking about, it's just not a thing anymore. So that's been a challenge as well.
Well, when your dad was, well, obviously he's still playing, but when
Yeah,
he was touring in the day, I mean, they toured just to sell the album,
exactly.
and that's the inverse now. You have to
Yeah.
play live just to make some kind of money.
Yeah. But then it's like promoters don't want to book you unless you've got a big social media following. And it's like, how are you supposed to get the social media following? It's this weird, like, chicken or the egg kind of situation. It's a catch 22. So people have to produce content that a lot of times has nothing to do with their music just to get people to look, because obviously the algorithm is going to smash all your engagement if you try to promote anything that's linking off site. So it's like, this is what I'm saying. In order to be a successful musician these days, you have to be like an internet marketer first. A lot
Yeah,
of people just don't have
the
that
record labels now
training.
want you to come to the table with millions of followers,
Yeah.
a finished product, and then they just distribute it. They're not
Hmm.
doing any of the work, and it's
No, and they want a huge piece of, your publishing and all this stuff on the back end in order to do that, which if you've built like legitimately a huge social media following, that's why everyone's like, "Oh, you don't need labels." But it's like if you want to do all the things that a musician would do, like go out on tour and play festivals and have, it's obviously really hard out on the road, but that's for me and for a lot of people, that's where the fun is, getting up there and playing your music for people. Like that's what a musician should do, right? But in order to do that, you still need at least like a good booking agent. You
mhm.
do need like a powerful label that's able to get you those slots a lot of times. Or like I said, at the very least, like a really good booking agent who can get you out there. So it's a difficult game always, and it always has been. But now it's just there's so many other weird nuances that I don't think people really understand, you know?
And the thing is, it's evolving where something that might have worked 2 years ago may not work now.
Exactly. It's
And
fast, man. It changes so fast.
really, I mean, as far as what platforms are more popular, I mean,
Hmm.
what is AI going to do?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's scary. Um, but anyway, it's cool that you got to start. And the EP, I've been thinking for a few years now. It makes more sense to release EPs or merely singles
Definitely.
instead of
Yeah.
putting a year into making an album and you release it and 2 weeks later it's old news and you put
Nothing.
8 months of work into it. If you can release a
Exactly.
song every 3 or 4 months, you're staying fresh.
Totally. And that's kind of, most of the labels that I've talked to. I had a couple like label deals in the can for some of my previous work. And obviously I didn't take any of them because they weren't really beneficial to what I was doing. They wanted way too much ownership. But everybody's saying like, yeah, the strongest strategy is basically just to release singles until you kind of have enough of a following or enough momentum to put out an EP with a little bit more work. And typically people put songs on the EP that they've already released as singles, so you're maybe getting one or two new tracks anyways. It's kind of funny. But yeah, putting all the work into rolling out a real record like an LP, it just doesn't make sense. It costs way too much money to do marketing for that kind of stuff. Like you're looking at, I mean, I don't know, if you want to do it similar to what a label's doing, you're needing $100,000 upwards of that to really do any kind of meaningful work in the marketplace. And even then, it's like without having proper distribution channels, nobody's going to listen to it. Or you
Mhm.
look at like the first like 4 tracks of like a 10-track record, and you're going to get streams on that. But the further you go down the line, the more fall off you're going to see. People just don't want to listen anymore. But the one exception might be like vinyl. Like if you get somebody that's actually paying money for the vinyl, like they're going to sit there, they're going to listen to it, which is great. But you don't see those numbers on streaming services. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. And people
just
talk
a lot
about
of
how
stuff.
vinyl isn't keeping up. There's a backlog on getting it pressed. I'm like, well, if you
Yeah,
put an industry out of business for 30 years and then say, hey, surprise, you're popular again. Well, of course they can't keep up.
exactly. Yeah, and I mean it's kind of cool that people like Jack White and Third Man Records are doing a lot to push back against that and opening up new record plants. I think that's amazing. But yeah, it's been frustrating. Like as an artist, I really want to release something on vinyl, but unless I'm willing to wait like 16 months in terms of the lead time, I can't do that. And then what? People are supposed to pre-order it and just wait for a year and a half until it gets there. It's really difficult, man. There's a lot of interesting challenges to navigate that I never thought would be there, growing up.
But hey, it's worth it. You're getting your vision out there.
Yeah,
You're being
definitely.
creative. I mean, that's the beauty of it. That's fun.
Absolutely. That's the thing at the end of the day that makes it all worthwhile is these fun little ideas that you had one day sitting on the couch end up becoming these things that people listen to and find a way to relate to and brings people together. That's why you do it.
Totally.
That's a beautiful feeling.
When you make a song that you really like and you get the enjoyment of just realizing as you're listening to it, like that didn't exist
Yeah,
until I
it,
made it.
exactly. It's
That's
like magic. You're just
Yeah,
pulling
it
ideas
really
out of
is.
thin air. I love that. Yeah.
Um, random, not random question. I'm sure you get tired of it. As you can, I don't know if you can, what you can see. If you can see,
Oh yeah.
bit of
Yep.
a fan. Do you have any memories? I mean, what are your memories as a youngster around the Van Halens? Like,
Oh man. I mean, we had a house in Malibu when I was growing up before my parents got divorced. It was like one house over from Eddie's. I spent a lot of time growing up with Eddie, hanging out with him, hanging out with Valerie. When Wolfie was really little, he's a little younger than me, but we would hang out as like small kids, And I just remember Eddie to be like the one of the sweetest, most genuine people I'd ever met. And there was never any, at least how I remember it, he wasn't a guy that was like doing it because he wanted to be famous. Like he really just loved playing guitar, writing songs, performing for people, and he was like a really pure guy. And I
hmm,
know later, like substances and addiction and all these things came into play, but like at his core, he was just the sweetest guy.
yeah,
And I got nothing but love and respect for him and his family. And yeah, that's a lot of really good memories.
that's cool. Yeah, and what your
Yeah.
dad did was he is one of the very few people to replace an iconic frontman
Yeah.
and maintain the success and exceed that on some levels. It
True.
doesn't happen very much.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, you can look at other bands that had lead singers come in and replace people, bands like Iron Maiden, whatever. Like they had a lot more commercial success later on. And I love Maiden. They're one of my favorite, old school classic metal bands.
Totally.
Um, but I do really like the first two records, and I think I like Killers more than anything else. I mean, I grew up being more of like a punk fan, and if you
Mhm.
listen to like the earlier Maiden stuff, especially something like Killers, it's got like a little bit more of an edge. It's a little more raw and less
Yeah.
polished. And I love Bruce Dickinson. His voice is incredible, and clearly he's a fantastic performer. Even well into the later years of his life, he's still kicking ass. But their original lead singer was a killer too, no pun intended. So yeah, for my
Yeah, I
pops to
mean, one of
come
my
in there,
favorite Maiden songs, as a big Bruce Dickinson fan as I am, "Prodigal Son" off Killers is still one of my favorite
yeah,
songs.
incredible song. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was just listening to Killers the other day working out, and I was like, man, this record is so good,
it
man.
is, it's so good. Yeah.
but but yeah, back to the original question. Yeah, Pops being able to come in there and replace frontman like David Lee Roth, who's an incredible performer. Like people might give him shit about his singing ability or whatever, and there's stories about Ted obviously in there in the first record, wondering like if he even wanted him in there. All of that is like you throw that to the wayside when you see him perform. He's such a personality, and
He owns the
obviously
stage.
yeah, if you still pay attention to social media, it's like he's still got that thing. He's just one of those guys where he's it's like infectious. So I got
Mhm.
a lot of respect for him as a front man, and Pops being able to go in there and do a good job replacing him and still bring a powerful persona to the stage. That's something I got a lot of respect for.
Well, he did a great job, Sammy did, and,
Hmm.
because he brought a different element to it. He brought the greater vocal range and it just really transformed the band. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's just like two chapters of a really good book. It's
right. It's just
yeah,
different. Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Well, cool. Well, I am looking forward to it. And let's make sure you list out what are the best social media sites, as much as you
Yeah.
load them, to keep track of you and updates and where to find the music, buy it, that kind of thing.
Totally, yeah. I'm the most active on Instagram, even though it's a dying platform. So you can find me on Instagram at Andrew Hagar Official. I'm also on TikTok on Andrew Hagar Official. I barely post there, but Will start posting there more often. And then I also have a Facebook, Andrew Hagar, my artist page. Those are the three best places to find me. Most of the stuff on Facebook is an aggregate of Instagram. So you want to check me out, hit me up, talk to me or whatever, hit me on Instagram, Andrew Hagar Official. And that's where you'll find all the latest stuff, my tour dates, my, upcoming releases, all sorts of silly videos of me doing ridiculous things. So
Very cool. You planning on coming out to the East Coast any?
I would love to. I've been dying to get back out to the East Coast on tour. We played a lot of shows out there 2017, 18, 19. And I love the audiences out there much more than some of the places in California. California's got a few tough places to tour, specifically like Los Angeles and the Bay. But yeah, hopefully we'll make it back out there sometime later this year. Like I said, we're looking at something a little more substantial in the fall. And if all of the stuff that I'm doing with the booking agencies right now goes through, yeah, we'll be back out soon.
Perfect. I'll keep an eye out. If you come near Philly, I'll be sure to
Awesome.
check
Yeah,
it
my
out.
bass player's from Philly. Yeah.
What's that?
I said my bass player Greg is from Philly. So we're
Oh,
gonna make it
okay.
back out to Philly for real. Yeah.
I'm originally from Atlanta, but I've lived here for a few years now. So
Awesome.
yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks again, Andrew. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. And great
Thank you,
talking to
Peter.
you. And we're looking forward to hearing more.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for making time, Peter. I appreciate you.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Later, man.